Surah Baqarah, ayah number 8 to ayah number 20. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And among men there are some who say we believe in Allah and in the last day, yet they are no believers. They try to deceive Allah and those who believe when they are deceiving none but their own selves, and they are not aware. In their hearts there is a malady, so Allah has made them grow in their malady, and for them there lies a grievous punishment, for they have been lying. And when it is said to them, do not spread disorder on the earth, they say we are nothing but reformers. Beware, it is in fact they who spread disorder, but they are not aware. And when it is said to them, believe as people have believed, they say, shall we believe as fools believe? Beware, it is in fact they who are the fools, but they do not know. And when they meet those who believe, they say, we have entered faith. But when they are alone with their Satans, they say, indeed we are with you, we were only mocking. It is Allah who mocks them, and lets them go on wandering blindly in their rebellion. These are the people who have bought error at the price of guidance, so their trade has brought no gain, nor have they found guidance. Their case is as if a man kindles a fire, and when it illuminates everything around him, Allah takes away their lights and leaves them in layers of darkness. They see nothing. Deaf, dumb, and blind, they shall not return. Or it is like a rainstorm from the sky carrying darkness, thunder, and lightning. They thrust their fingers in their ears against thunderclaps for the fear of death, and Allah encompasses the disbelievers, and lightning all but snatches away their eyes. Every time a flash gives them light, they walk by it, and when darkness grows upon them, they stand still. And if Allah willed, He would certainly take away their hearing and their eye. Surely Allah is powerful over everything. Commentary. As we have seen, the Surah Al-Baqarah opens with the declaration that the Holy Quran is beyond all doubt. The first 20 verses of the surah delineate the features of those who believe in the Holy Quran and of those who do not. The first 5 dealing with the former under the title of Al-Muttaqun, the God-fearing. The next 2 with those disbelievers who are quite open and violent in their hostility, that is Al-Ghafirun, the disbelievers or the infidels. And the following 13 with those crafty disbelievers who claim to be Muslims, but in reality were not so. This second variety of disbelievers has received from the Holy Quran the name of Al-Munafiqun, the hypocrites. Of these 13 verses, the first 2 define the characteristic behavior of the hypocrites thus: وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. And among men there are some who say we believe in Allah and the last day, yet they are no disbelievers. They try to deceive Allah and those who believe when they are deceiving none but their own selves, and they are not aware. These verses expose their claim to be Muslims as false and deceitful, and show that they are only trying to be clever. Obviously, no one can deceive Allah. Probably they themselves could not have had such a delusion, but the Holy Quran equates in a way their attempt to deceive the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims with the desire to deceive Allah Himself. Such a desire, the Holy Quran points out, can only have one consequence. They end up by deceiving no one but themselves, for Allah Himself cannot possibly be deceived. And the divine revelation protects the Holy Prophet ﷺ from all trickery and deceit, so that the hypocrites themselves will have to bear in the other world as well as this the punishment for their presumptuousness. The third verse indicates why the hypocrites behave so foolishly and why they fail to see the folly of their course. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. In their hearts there is a malady, so Allah has made them grow in their malady. Now, illness or disease, in the general medical sense, is a state in which a man has lost the balanced proportion of elements within him necessary to keep him healthy, so that his body can no longer function properly, which may finally lead to his total destruction. In the terminology of the Quran and the Hadith, the word disease is also applied to certain mental or physical states. We are using the 2 terms in the original and more comprehensive sense, which hinder man from attaining any degree of spiritual perfection, for they gradually deprive him of the ability to perform good deeds, and even of ordinary human decency, till he meets with his spiritual death. The great spiritual master Junaid of Baghdad has said that just as the diseases of the body arise from an imbalance among the four humours, the diseases of the hearts arise from a surrender to one's physical desires. According to the present verse, the disease hidden in their hearts is unbelief and rejection of the truth, which is as much a physical sickness as a spiritual one. It is all too obvious that being ungrateful to one's creator and nourisher is going against his commandments to be spiritually sick. Moreover, to keep this disbelief concealed for the sake of petty worldly gains, and not to have the courage to speak out one's mind, is no less a disease of the soul. Hypocrisy is a physical disease too, insofar as the hypocrite is always shuddering for fear of being exposed. Jealousy being a necessary ingredient of hypocrisy, he cannot bear to see the Muslims growing stronger in the world, and yet the poor hypocrite cannot even have the satisfaction of unburdening his heart of the venom. No wonder that all this tension should express itself in physical ailment. As for Allah making them grow in their malady, it means that they are jealous of the growing strength of the Muslims, and it is Allah's will to make the position of the Muslims even stronger, as they can see for themselves, which feeds their bile and keeps the disease of their hearts growing. The 4th and the 5th verses expose the sophistry of the hypocrites. Their activities threaten to produce a general chaos and disorder, and yet, in their mealy-mouthed way, they pretended to be men of goodwill and to be serving the cause of peace and order. The Holy Quran makes it clear that oral claims alone do not decide the question whether one is working for order or disorder. For what thief would call himself a thief? It depends on what one does, not on what one says. If a man's activities do result in mischief, he will be called a mischief maker even if he had no such intention. These 2 verses thus describe the state of their insensitivity and ignorance. They regard their defects as merits. The 6th verse shows the other aspect of this depravity. The merit of others, that is, the unalloyed faith of the Muslims, changes into a defect and even becomes contemptible in their eyes. This verse also places before the hypocrites a criterion of true faith, iman. Aminu kama amanan nasu, believe as people has believed. According to the consensus of commentators, the Arabic word nas, people, in this verse refers to the blessed companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, because it is just these people who had embraced the faith and had accepted the Holy Quran as the word of Allah while it was being revealed. So the verse indicates that the only kind of iman, faith, acceptable to Allah is the one which should be similar to that of the blessed companions, and that the iman of others would be worthy of the name only when they believe in the same things in the same way as the companions did. In other words, the iman of the companions is a touchstone for testing the iman of all other Muslims. Any belief or deed which departs from their faith and practice, however pleasing in its looks and good in its intention, is not valid according to the Sharia. There is a consensus of commentators on this position. One should also notice that the hypocrites used to call the blessed companions fools, sufaha. This has always been the way of those who go astray. Anyone who tries to show them the right path is, in their eyes, ignorant and stupid. But who could, the Holy Quran points out, be more stupid than the man who refuses to see clear signs? In the 7th verse, we see the double-facedness and trickery of the hypocrites. In the company of the Muslims, they would vociferously declare their faith in Islam, but going back to their own people, they would reassure them that they had not left the way of their ancestors and that they had been meeting the Muslims only to make fun of them. The 8th verse is a comment on this attitude of complacency and self-congratulation on the part of the hypocrites. They are mightily pleased with themselves in the belief that they can so easily make a fool of the Muslims and get away with it, while they are in fact only making a fool of themselves. For Allah has, in His forbearance and mercy, given them a long rope, but this is a provision for their being thrown into ridicule. It took place like this. Since the hypocrites saw no apparent signs of divine punishment descending on themselves, they were encouraged in their complacency and rebellion, so that the cup of their iniquity was full, and one day they were caught. Allah acted like this in response to their mockery, so the Holy Quran describes this divine action too as a mockery on the part of Allah. The 9th verse shows us the basic denseness of the hypocrites, how they failed to make use of the ordinary sense of discrimination. They had grown up in a pagan society and knew very well that what the way of the infidels was. Now they had become familiar enough with Islam too, and could easily see the difference. But in their greed and for the sake of petty worldly benefit, they still chose disbelief as against Islam and bartered away something as invaluable as Iman for something as worthless or even harmful as kufr. In giving the name of trade or commerce to this action, the Holy Quran suggests that these worldly wise men had no understanding even of the art of trading. The last 4 verses bring out the miserable plight of the hypocrites with the help of 2 extended similes. The choice of 2 examples is meant to divide the hypocrites into 2 kinds of men. On the one hand were those in whom disbelief had taken deep roots, so that they had little inclination towards Islam, but pretended to be Muslims for worldly motives. The Holy Quran compares them to the man who, having found light, again loses it and is left in darkness. On the other hand were those who did recognize the truth of Islam and sometimes wished to be genuine Muslims, but worldly interests would not allow them to do so, and they remained in a perpetual state of hesitation and doubt. They have been likened to the men caught in a thunderstorm who move forward a step or 2 when there is a flash of lightning, but when it is over, again get stuck. In the course of these parables, the hypocrites have also been warned that they are not beyond the power of Allah, and that He can, as and when He likes, take away their sight and their hearing, and even destroy them. Injunctions and related considerations. It has sometimes been debated as to whether the distinction between kufr, infidelity or disbelief, and nifaq, hypocrisy, still holds good even after the days of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. The correct position with regards to this question is this. At that time, there were 2 ways of identifying a hypocrite and declaring him to be one. Either Allah Himself informed the Holy Prophet ﷺ through revelation that such and such a man was not a Muslim at heart, but a hypocrite, or a man through some word or deed overtly repugnant to the Islamic creed or practice showed himself up as a hypocrite, thus providing a clear evidence against himself. Divine revelation having ceased with the departure of the Holy Prophet ﷺ from this world, the first way of identifying a hypocrite is no longer available, but the second way is still valid. That is to say, if a man is found on certain evidence to be guilty in word or deed of rejecting or opposing or distorting or holding in scorn the basic doctrines of Islam, undeniably established by the Holy Quran, the Hadith, and the Ijma consensus, he would be considered as a munafiq, in spite of his claim to be a true Muslim. The Holy Quran gives such a hypocrite the name of mulhid or heretic, those who distort our verses. Surah number 41, ayah number 40. And the Hadith calls him a zindiq. One must also add that since kufr of such a man has been proved by clear and definite evidence, the Sharia will not put him in a separate category, but deal with him as it would deal with any other kafir. That is why the authentic scholars are unanimous in concluding that after the departure of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, the question of hypocrites ceased to be a relevant one. Now anyone who is not a genuine Muslim will be regarded as a kafir. The famous author Al-Aini, in his commentary on Al-Bukhari, reports from Imam Malik that after the days of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, this is the only available means of identifying hypocrisy, and that a man who carries this mark could be called a hypocrite. A little reflection on these verses would reveal the true nature of Iman and Islam, and also that of kufr, for the Holy Quran reports the claim of the hypocrites to be Muslims. We believe in Allah. Forthwith refutes this claim, yet they are no believers. In order to understand fully the implications of these verses, one should bear in mind the fact that the hypocrites in question were actually Jews. Now, belief in Allah and in the hereafter is no doubt an essential part of their creed as well. What was not included in their creed, as defined by their religious scholars, was the belief in the prophethood of Muhammad ﷺ. In declaring their faith in Islam, the Jews very cleverly used to leave out the belief in the Holy Prophet ﷺ and mention only 2 elements, belief in Allah and belief in the hereafter. So far as the declaration goes, they cannot be called liars, and yet the Holy Quran refutes their claims to be Muslims and regards them as liars. Why? The fact is that for one to be Muslim, it is not sufficient merely to declare one's faith in Allah and the hereafter in any form or manner which suits one's individual and collective fancy. As for that, associators of all kinds do, in one way or another, believe in Allah and consider Him omnipotent, but the Holy Quran does not allow any of these things to pass for Iman. Iman or faith in Allah must, in order to be valid and worthy of the name, conform to what the Holy Quran specifically lays down with regards to the divine names and attributes. Similarly, belief in the hereafter can only be valid when it is true to the specifications of the Holy Quran and the Hadith. In the light of this explanation, one can see that the Jews who pretended to be Muslims believed neither in Allah nor in the hereafter according to these definite requirements. For on the one hand, they considered the Prophet Uzair or Ezra alayhimussalam as the son of God, and on the other cherished the fond belief that the progeny of the prophets, no matter how it acted, would always remain the chosen of God, and would not be called to account on the Day of Judgment, or at the worst receive only a token punishment. These being their beliefs, the Holy Quran rightly rejects their claims to faith in Allah and the hereafter. As we have already said, verse 13 defines what Iman, faith, really is. Believe as other men have believed. In other words, the criterion for judging one's claim to Iman is the Iman of the blessed companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and any claim to Iman which does not conform to it is not acceptable to Allah and to the Holy Prophet ﷺ. If a man has the presumption to interpret an Islamic doctrine or verse of the Quran in a way which departs from the explicit and clear explanation provided by the Holy Quran itself or by the Holy Prophet, his individual opinion and belief, no matter how much it titillates the palate of his contemporaries or feeds their fancy, will have no value or validity in the eyes of the Sharia. For example, the Qadianis claim that like Muslims, they too believe in the doctrine of the finality of the prophethood of Muhammad ﷺ. But in this respect, they deviate from what the Holy Prophet ﷺ has himself stated and what the companions believed in, and distort the doctrine so as to make room for the prophethood of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. So according to the indication of the Holy Quran, they come under this indictment. They are no believers. In short, if a man interprets an Islamic doctrine in a way which is repugnant to the Iman of the blessed companions, and yet claims to be a Muslim on the basis of his adherence to this doctrine, and also performs his religious duties exactly like a Muslim, he will not be considered a mu'min until and unless he agrees to conform to the criterion of Iman laid down by the Holy Quran. Removal of a doubt. We may also dispel a misunderstanding which often arises and is more often made to arise with an ulterior motive, with regard to the famous dictum in the Hadith and Fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, that the people of the Kaaba, Ahl al-Qibla, that is, those who turn towards the Kaaba in offering prescribed salah, cannot be branded as infidels. The verse under discussion clearly defines the meaning of the phrase Ahl al-Qibla. The term pertains only to those who do not deny any of the basic essential doctrines and commandments of Islam, which are called daruriyat, essentials. For that matter, even the hypocrites mentioned in the Holy Quran used to offer their prayers exactly as the Muslims did, but turning towards the Kaaba while praying was not taken to be sufficient to make them acceptable as true Muslims, simply because they did not have faith in all the essentials of Islam as the blessed companions did. Lying is contemptible. The verse "Amanu billahi wa bil yawmil akhir," we believe in Allah and in the last day, shows us how disgusting it is to tell a lie. Even the hypocrites, with all their hostility to Islam, tried to refrain from it as far as possible. In claiming to be Muslims, they used to mention only their faith in Allah and in the Day of Judgment, but left out faith in the Holy Prophet ﷺ for fear of telling a lie. Misbehaving with prophets is to misbehave with Allah. These verses denounce the hypocrites for trying to be clever with Allah Himself and to deceive him, although no one among them could possibly have had such an intention or even thought of such a possibility. What they were actually doing was try to deceive the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims. Allah has equated this effort with an attempt to deceive him, and has thus indicated that a man who is in any way impertinent to a prophet or a man of Allah is ultimately guilty of being impertinent to Allah himself. This should be true above all in the case of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, who stands in his station at the head of all created beings. The curse of telling lies. There is another subtle and very significant point here. According to these verses, the hypocrites would meet with a grievous punishment for having told lies. Now, their greatest crime was disbelief and hypocrisy in matters of faith, and they had been committing other crimes as well, like nursing envy and malice against Muslims in their hearts, and actually conspiring against them. And yet here the grievous punishment has been connected with their habit of telling lies. This is an indication that basically this nefarious habit was their real crime, which gradually led them to hypocrisy and disbelief. In other words, although hypocrisy and disbelief are much greater crimes, yet they arise from the habit of telling lies. That is why the Holy Quran combines the sin of lying, with the sin of idol worship in the same phrase. Guard yourself against the filth of idols and against telling lies. Surah number 22, ayah number 30. Who are reformers and mischief makers? As these verses report, when the hypocrites were asked not to spread disorder in the land through their prevarication and double-dealing, they used to reply emphatically, "Innama nahnu muslihun," we are nothing but reformers. The word innama, nothing but, used in the Arabic text, indicates not merely emphasis but exclusivity. So their reply would mean that they are nothing but reformers, the servants of order, and that their activities could have nothing to do with disorder. Commenting on their reply, the Holy Quran says, "Ala innahum humul mufsiduna walakin la yash'urun." Beware, it is in fact they who spread disorder, but they are not aware. Now we learn of two things from this comment. Firstly, the activities of the hypocrites did actually produce disorder in the land. Secondly, they did not indulge in these activities with the express intention or design of creating disorder. They were not even aware of the possibility that their actions could be the cause of disorder. For among the things which spread disorder in the world, there are some which are commonly recognized to be mischievous and disorderly activities, and hence every sensible and contentious man refrains from them, e.g. theft, robbery, murder, rape, etc. On the other hand, there are some which in their external aspect do not appear to be mischief or disorder, but working unseen, they have the necessary consequence of destroying the morals of men, which in turn opens the door to all kinds of disorder. This is exactly what the hypocrites were doing. No doubt they refrained from theft, robbery, etc. It was on this count that they denied their being mischievous, and emphatically asserted that they were serving the cause of order. But all this while they had been freely giving vent to their malice and envy by conspiring with the enemies of the Muslims. These are things which finally bring man down to the level of beasts. Once he has lost his awareness of ethical values and human decency, even an average man becomes an agent of social disorder, of a disorder much greater than that released by thieves or robbers, or even beasts are capable of producing. For the mischief of robbers and beasts can be controlled by the physical power of law and government. But laws are made and enforced by men. What happens to laws when man has ceased to be man can easily be witnessed all around us in the world of today. Everyone takes it for granted that humanity is on the march, and the modern man is so far the ultimate in civilization. The network of educational institutions covers every hamlet on the face of this earth. Legislative bodies keep buzzing night and day. Organizations for the promulgation of laws spend billions, and circumlocution offices proliferate. And yet crime and disorder keep in step with the march of civilization. The reason is simple. Law is not an automatic machine. It requires men to make it work. If man ceases to be man, neither laws nor bureaucratic agencies can provide a remedy for the all-pervading disorder. It is for this that the greatest benefactor of mankind, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, concentrated all his attention on making men real men, in all the plenitude of the term. Once this has been achieved, crime and disorder comes to an end of itself without the help of enormous police forces and extensive system of law courts. As long as people acted upon his teachings in certain parts of the world, man saw a kind of peace and order prevail, the like of which had never been witnessed before, nor is likely to be witnessed when these teachings are abandoned or degraded. Insofar as actual practice is concerned, the essence of the teachings of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is the fear of Allah and solicitude for the assessment of one's deeds on the Day of Judgment. If these are absent, no constitution or legal code, nor administrative body or university can force or induce man to keep away from crime. Those who run the world in our day invent ever new administrative measures to prevent crime. But they not only neglect the very soul of administration, the fear of Allah, but even deploy the means of destroying it, all of which has the necessary consequence that the remedy only helps to feed the malady. To another aspect of the question, it is easy enough to find a cure for thieves and robbers, and for all those who create disorder openly. But the miscreants who have been described in these verses always appear in the garb of reformers, brandishing colourful schemes of social amelioration, which are only a mask for personal interests, and for raising the slogan, "Innama nahnu muslihun," we are nothing but reformers. Hence it is that Allah, while asking men not to spread disorder on the earth, has also said in another place, "And Allah knows the one who makes mischief distinct from the one who promotes good." Surah number 2, Surah Baqarah, ayah number 220. This is an indication that Allah alone knows the state of men's hearts and their intentions, and He alone knows the nature and consequence of each human deed as to whether it would help the cause of order or of disorder. So to serve the cause of order, it is not merely sufficient to possess such an intention. Much more essential than that is to orientate oneself in thought and deed in harmony with the Sharia, for any action may, in spite of the best intentions, sometimes result in mischief and disorder if it is not guided by the Sharia.